My name is Ava Lorraine Mercer. I'm 29 years old, and I found out my entire family went on a Christmas cruise without me because of an Instagram post. It was December 23rd, around 4:30 in the afternoon, and I remember the moment with ridiculous clarity because I had just gotten out of Target and was sitting in my car peeling off one of those stubborn red security stickers from a discounted candle. The weather outside was gray and slushy, the kind of day where even the sky feels tired. I wasn't planning anything big for Christmas. Honestly, I had made peace with spending it alone. I'd done it the last few years, not because I wanted to, but because being forgotten eventually becomes routine. Still, I bought wrapping paper, tape, and 2 gift bags, just in case. Hope is a habit that dies slow. While the engine warmed, I opened Instagram, a distraction, a hit of noise to soften the empty feeling in my stomach. The first post on my feed nearly made me drop my phone. It was a carousel from my Aunt Nancy. Photo 1, an endless stretch of turquoise ocean. Photo 2, a group shot on the deck of a cruise ship. My parents, my brother Ryan, his fiancée Lindsay, even cousin Bree, all smiling like they'd stepped into a commercial for Perfect Families, TM, sunglasses, frozen margaritas, coordinated outfits, the whole polished, we're doing amazing aesthetic. The caption read, "Holiday bliss with just the ones who matter most. Just the ones who matter." I stared at those 5 words so long the screen dimmed twice. I scrolled to the comments. Bree had posted a heart emoji. Lindsay tagged the cruise line. My mom had commented a sun emoji and best Christmas ever. 3 hours ago. 3 hours and no one had called, texted, nothing. I opened the family group chat. Dead since Thanksgiving. Typical. At first I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was last minute. Maybe they assumed I had plans. Maybe they didn't want to bother me. But the more I looked at the photos, the matching luggage, the planned dinners, the spa bracelets, the more obvious the truth became. This wasn't last minute. This wasn't accidental. This was coordinated. And I was excluded on purpose. The air in my car felt suddenly too thin. That night, Christmas Eve, I sat alone with a frozen pizza and a bottle of wine, trying not to check their stories. I failed miserably. They were in Aruba. Sunset dinners, spa days, snorkeling excursions. Someone recording Ryan diving off a catamaran while my mom cheered like he invented jumping. My dad was wearing the Hawaiian shirt I bought him 3 years ago. None of them looked like they missed me. I went to bed telling myself it couldn't get worse. I was wrong. Christmas morning, my phone buzzed with a credit alert. Your card has been maxed out. I blinked. I rarely use that card. Emergencies only. My heart thudded as I logged into my account. $8,312.46 in new charges. Spa packages. Champagne brunches. Airport lounges. Duty-free perfume. Jewelry. A $1,200 his and hers massage billed to the ship's luxury spa. My hands went cold. Then the group chat pinged. A message from Ryan. She won't care. He meant to send it to someone else. Probably my mom. 10 seconds later. Sorry, Ava, wrong chat. Something sharp in me snapped back into place. I typed, care now? Then I reported every charge as fraud. I called the credit card company. I called the cruise line. I called the airline. I explained calmly that I wasn't on the ship, wasn't in the Caribbean, wasn't drinking $50 champagne or enjoying seaweed facials. I told them I lived in Minneapolis and had never left. The fraud investigations began immediately. Accounts were frozen, flags raised, policies triggered, and my family had no idea. Not yet. At 5:48 a.m., my phone began exploding. Calls, emails, alerts from the cruise line, notifications from the airline. They were stuck. They were panicking. They were realizing something was wrong. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like the forgotten one. I felt in control. By the next morning, my phone looked like it had survived a natural disaster. 42 missed calls, texts that froze my messaging app twice, and 3 voicemails that all started the same way, with someone trying to sound calm while clearly unraveling. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I made myself breakfast, poured coffee into my favorite chipped mug, and opened the blinds. Snow was falling in lazy, half-hearted flakes. It felt like the universe had finally decided to give me a neutral backdrop for once. My mother's first voicemail tried to sound breezy. Ava, sweetheart, there was some kind of mix-up with the cards. We figured you wouldn't mind since you never used that one, and the trip came together so fast, we didn't want to bother you. Didn't want to bother me. That was her version of erasing me from Christmas. I deleted the voicemail before she launched into her signature wounded sigh. The second message was from Ryan. Mom was trembly guilt. Ryan was irritation, soaked in entitlement. Okay, look. The ship's billing department locked our account until we verify the charges. We can't buy anything. They said we might not be allowed off at the next port. You need to fix this. Seriously, fix it. Fix it, fix it. They drained my card, left me behind, and now expected me to come clean up their mess like always. I ate my scrambled eggs instead. Around noon, Ryan sent another message, adorably inconsistent. Come on, Ava, we're stuck in the middle of the ocean. You're ruining Christmas. I didn't reply. Instead, I called this cruise line again to make sure the fraud report stayed active. The representative checked something on her end, hesitated, then said, Since the account is officially disputed, their onboard privileges have been suspended until the matter is resolved. What does that mean? I asked. She cleared her throat gently, almost sympathetically. No spa services, no alcohol or specialty dining, no excursions, no internet package. Basic meals only. In other words, the luxury cruise had turned into a floating cafeteria where they couldn't even check Instagram to complain about it. Thank you, I said. After I hung up, I finally allowed myself one small, victorious exhale. Not joy, not revenge, something quieter, something like equilibrium. They took a Christmas without me. I took a cruise without them. By 3 p.m., I switched gears. There was a more important loose end to tie off, one that had been dangling for years. Because here's what my family hadn't considered when they charged up my card and sailed off into tropical bliss. The house they lived in, it wasn't theirs. I bought it when I was 26, with my promotion money from my software job. Back then, they were struggling. My dad between jobs, my mom drowning in medical bills they refused to disclose details about. I offered the house as a lifeline. They moved in with the agreement that they would handle the property's day-to-day responsibilities and not treat me like a breathing ATM. That lasted 8 months. Then the requests started. A broken dryer, groceries, just this once, utility bills, car repairs, property taxes. By year 2, I was covering 90% of their lives while being treated like an afterthought. But I'd let it slide because they were my family. And family disappoints you in the slowest, most painless ways until suddenly you realize you're bleeding. But that was before they excluded me, before they spent thousands in my name, before they laughed about it in group chat. So I called my lawyer. What options do I have? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Well, he said, given you're the legal owner and they've been violating your agreements for years, quite a few. By 4:30 p.m., I had a plan. By 6 o'clock p.m., I stood on their porch with a locksmith. The air was cold enough to sting. The locksmith worked fast, swapping out each lock with quiet efficiency. Front door, back door, garage entry, shed. An hour and a half later, he handed me a keyring. Cold metal, new beginnings. Their keys wouldn't work anymore. I imagined the scene. My parents coming home sunburned, exhausted, money drained, dignity bruised. Wheeling their matching cruise line luggage up the porch, trying the door. Once, twice. Knocking. Looking confused, calling me. I pictured my phone lighting up and me not answering. Not out of spite, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. They made it painfully clear who mattered. Now it was my turn. The next morning, their messages shifted tone from annoyance to panic. The cruise line froze their account entirely. Their return flights were under fraud review. They needed me to fix everything. I didn't pick up. Instead, I packed a lunch, played some music, and worked remotely with my phone face down like it was finally a creature I could tame. They boarded their return flight with no idea that they were heading not toward home, but toward a locked door and an eviction notice. And this time, I wasn't going to apologize for the consequences they earned. Their flight touched down on a Sunday evening. I knew the exact moment because the booking, paid for with my credit card, was still tied to my airline app, and I watched the little plane icon land while eating salmon from a foil packet in my apartment. At 6:12 p.m., my doorbell camera sent a motion alert. I tapped in, curiosity simmering beneath my ribs like heat. There they were. My mom stepped onto the porch first, still wearing a floppy resort hat like she hadn't realized vacation was over. Her face was sunburned and tight with annoyance. She tried her key once, twice. She frowned, tried again. Behind her, my dad dragged two oversized suitcases and one carry-on, matching navy blue luggage they must have proudly wheeled through half the Caribbean. He stepped forward and tried his key too. Nothing. They exchanged a look I had seen my whole life, confusion sliding into indignation. Then came the knocking. At first, a light tap, almost polite, then louder, then pounding. I sat on my couch miles away, sipping water, watching them through a tiny screen like it was a scene from a surreal documentary. After 10 minutes, Mom pressed the doorbell. "Ava," she called, cheerful and strained. "Sweetheart, something's wrong with the lock." I muted the live feed. They eventually sat on the porch bench, shoulders slumped. My dad pulled out his phone. My own phone began buzzing nonstop from across the room. I didn't answer, because by the time they set foot in my doorway, if they ever did, the rest of the plan had already been set in motion. Earlier that morning, I had emailed eviction notices to every adult involved. Certified copies were already en route. Another was taped to the inside of the front door where they couldn't miss it. It listed 8,312.46 eggs in credit card fraud, locksmith fees, legal counsel fees, 18 months of unpaid rent, retroactively billed, total owed $23,980, Weihnachtschaffen. Due immediately. I stared at my phone as their calls stacked into unread notifications like falling dominoes. Then silence. The next morning, I drove to the house and parked across the street with a coffee mug warming my hands. The sky was a pale, soft gray, the kind that makes your breath look like smoke. They hadn't returned yet. Inside the house, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Clean, quiet, orderly. My space again. My property, legally and literally. For the first time since I bought that house, it felt like mine instead of an emotional debt. By noon, the group chat reignited. "Mom, Ava, we're locked out. Why would you do this? Please call." "Ryan, are you serious? After everything, this is insane." Everything. As if I owed them perpetual access to my home and my income because... Why? Because I existed? I didn't respond. That afternoon, another message arrived. Longer, more frantic. They'd checked into a motel, a 2-star one near the interstate. The kind with buzzing fluorescent lights and carpets older than my childhood. My parents claimed they had nowhere to go. But here's the thing. For years, I had nowhere to go in that family. No place where I wasn't an afterthought or an ATM. No emotional home. No seat at their Christmas table. Now they were finally experiencing the absence they created. That evening, Ryan tried calling from another number, maybe assuming I blocked him. I let it ring. He left a voicemail that started calm, then cracked. "This is insane," he snapped. "You're tearing the family apart. Mom's crying, Dad's humiliated. This is cruel. Just talk to us, Ava. Talk. Talk like they'd talked to me when they planned the cruise? Talk like they talked about me while spending thousands in my name? Talk like they talked when they thought I wouldn't see the message. She won't care. He never does." They wanted a conversation now because their comfort was disrupted, not because they cared. 3 days later, they came back to the house. The doorbell camera lit up at 2:14 p.m. My dad was yelling before he even reached the porch. "Ava, open this door. Stop acting like a child." My mom stood behind him, sobbing loudly, louder than necessary, like she wanted the entire neighborhood as her audience. "You can't do this to us," she cried. "We're family." I watched quietly from my friend's place. After all these years, it finally occurred to me how strange it was that they only ever invoked family when they needed something. Dad banged on the camera again. "Answer me. Don't embarrass us." Embarrass them? They'd excluded me, used my money, mocked me in a group chat, and I was the embarrassment? I forwarded the footage to my lawyer. You can never have too much documentation. That week, the first payment in their eviction notice came due. They didn't pay. Of course they didn't. And ignoring legal notices has consequences. What I wasn't prepared for, what no one could have prepared for, was how desperate people become when the free ride ends. The next sign didn't come as a knock or a phone call. It came as a letter shoved under my apartment door. No envelope, just folded paper. My brother's handwriting scrawled angrily across my eviction notice. But inside the fold was something else. A typed, shared ownership agreement. Signed, stamped, dated 3 years ago. Claiming my father contributed $40,000 to the down payment. Claiming he was entitled to the house. Claiming I forged the eviction. There was even a notary stamp. The name on it? Nancy, my aunt. The same aunt who posted just the ones who matter most. My blood turned to ice. Not only had they excluded me, used me, and berated me, now they were forging legal documents. I didn't call, I didn't text, I didn't scream. I scanned everything, saved duplicates, forwarded it all to my lawyer. He responded with a single sentence. This just turned criminal. And I had no idea that this was only the beginning of a deeper, uglier war. The forged ownership agreement sat on my dining table like something radioactive. Cheap printer paper, mismatched fonts, the notary stamp tilted like someone smudged it on their lunch break. My signature, an old version from college, was shaky and clearly lifted from some forgotten birthday card. And the date? Off by 6 months from when I'd actually bought the house. I stared at it for a long time, feeling a slow, cold disgust unfurl in my chest. My family didn't just lie. They didn't just manipulate. They forged a legal document and used my aunt, to validate it. My lawyer didn't even blink when I sent him the photos. This is felony territory, he said. We'll file a fraud report immediately. But before the ink was dry on his paperwork, the next tremor hit. The credit card company called. Ms. Mercer, the agent said, voice crisp and cautious, someone called earlier this morning attempting to reverse your fraud claim. The caller identified herself as you. My stomach tightened. What did she say? She said she authorized all the charges. She insisted you made a mistake. I forced myself to breathe. That wasn't me. The agent hesitated. I can't say this officially, but it sounded like an older woman. We flagged the call and escalated it to our investigation team. My own mother had tried to impersonate me, to reverse the freeze, restore their access, undo every boundary I had set, not out of guilt, not out of remorse, but out of desperation. Because the free ride was over and reality was closing in. I hung up the phone and tried to gather myself, but my body wouldn't stop shaking. Not out of fear, but out of recognition. They weren't spiraling. They were strategizing. And then came the next knock. Not on my door, on my car window. It happened in the grocery store parking lot later that afternoon. I'd just loaded bags into my trunk when I heard tapping against the glass. I turned, startled, and saw a woman from my parents' neighborhood. A gray bob haircut, thick glasses, bundled against the cold. Clara, I said, rolling the window down. She'd lived 3 houses over from the home I'd bought for my parents. She glanced around nervously. I've been meaning to tell you something, sweetheart. Something's off. My heart climbed into my throat. What happened? It's your brother, she whispered. He's been back at the house. More than once. My blood iced over. He's going through the side gate, she continued. I saw him walking around the backyard late at night, trying the basement window, and one time I heard him kicking the fence. She paused, assessing my reaction. Do you want me to call the police next time? My voice came out small. Yes, please, call immediately. I thanked her, gave her a $100 grocery gift card on instinct, and drove directly to the police station. I filed a trespassing report, submitted my doorbell footage, and applied for a restraining order. Approved the next morning. I emailed copies to every number I had for Ryan. I didn't add commentary. The order itself said everything I needed. 2 hours later, he texted me. You're tearing the family apart. I was just trying to get some things. He didn't leave anything. He never had. They brought nothing into that house except expectation. I blocked him. By then, the fraud report against my mother was escalating. The forged document investigation was escalating. The eviction was underway, and their debts, rent, credit, cruise charges, were multiplying faster than they could invent excuses. Yet somehow there was still more. 3 days later, the mortgage department of a bank called me. Ms. Mercer, the woman said, we're contacting you regarding the property located at Hillside Lane. Someone attempted to refinance it and listed themselves as the sole owner. The grandparents' house, the one my parents inherited years ago but let rot from the inside out. Leaks, mold, unpaid taxes, structural decay. In 2020, I stepped in. I paid for renovations. I covered 3 years of property taxes. I insured it. I even rented it out to a family of 4, clean, responsible tenants who knew the home as mine, not my parents'. And now my parents were trying to refinance it behind my back. It appears, the woman continued, that the financial records don't match the ownership claim. All payments originate from you. Of course they do. That night, I pulled out everything: contractor invoices, bank transfers, rental agreements, insurance policies, even a typed contract my father signed 3 years ago, casually acknowledging I had full financial responsibility. That casual agreement was about to become the nail in their legal coffin. My lawyer filed a quiet title action. 2 days later, the grandparents' house, their supposed safety net, was legally locked. New access codes, new locks, new documentation filed with the county. The rental income now flowed solely to me. The tenants were notified. Everything was official. My parents had no idea. Not until the weekend, when they drove there assuming they could move in. The doorbell camera at that house captured my dad's face twist in disbelief. My mother tried her old key and pulled so hard the door shook. On the porch was a bright yellow notice. Private property trespassers will be prosecuted. The voicemails began immediately after. You're unstable. How dare you steal from your own family? We have no place left to go. Exactly. They had left me no place for years. Now they were learning what it felt like to live in the world they created. But the spiral wasn't done. A pastor called me, awkward, unsure, stumbling over his words. Your mother came to us. She said you've turned on them. I inhaled carefully. Did she mention the cruise? The credit card fraud? The forged documents? The break-in attempts? Silence. Then a quiet, I had a feeling there was more. I told him he could pray for them if he wanted, but I wasn't interested in their redemption arc. I was interested in finishing what I started, drawing the line they never thought I would. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for everything they built, on my money, on my silence, on my guilt, to finally crack wide open. By then, the eviction was fully processed. The fraud investigations were active. The credit card company had closed the case in my favor. The cruise line refused to refund a dime. The airline flagged their profiles. The bank put a watch on every account tied to them. They still tried to spin stories, but now those stories collapsed under the weight of evidence. And then came the call from a collections agency. Not for me, for my mother. Apparently, once I froze my credit card mid-cruise, she panicked and tried to throw together whatever funds she could to preserve the illusion of a luxury holiday. She maxed 2 credit cards of her own, and when that wasn't enough, she wrote checks to the cruise line. Bounce checks. Now a collections agency was pursuing her for $4,600. I calmly gave them her motel address. That was the first crack. The second came from the mortgage department tied to the grandparents' house, the one I had just secured through the quiet title action. They informed me that someone, my father, had attempted a second refinancing attempt with corrected documents. Except the documents were anything but corrected. Each one contradicted the last. The signatures didn't match. The dates made no sense, and the proof of contribution was a blurry, clearly doctored screenshot of a bank transfer log. My lawyer didn't even blink. He filed for fraud and submitted our full documentation trail. Meanwhile, my parents spiraled through motel after motel, jumping between discounted weekly rates and relatives' couches. Even the relatives who initially defended them started backing away once the truth reached them, not from my mouth, but through the court documents, bank records, and the security footage I released when my aunt tried smearing me with fake texts. And speaking of my aunt, she had gone unusually quiet, at least until the bank incident escalated, and then she resurfaced with something so desperate, so wildly reckless, that even my lawyer needed a moment to recompose himself. She submitted a sworn statement claiming I had coerced her into stamping the forged ownership document, that I had used emotional manipulation to get her to notarize it, and that I routinely abused my financial control over the family. She said all this with a notary stamp she herself misused. It backfired immediately. The court flagged her statement as contradictory to both the timeline and her original involvement. That triggered a separate inquiry into her notary license, which was suspended pending investigation. 2 safety nets gone. 3, if you count her reputation. But they weren't finished, because people who lose everything don't stop moving. They thrash. And the next thrash was the most dangerous. It came as a voicemail from the police asking me to confirm a trespassing report from my rental property. The tenants, the family of 4 who lived in the grandparents' house, reported someone pounding on the door and yelling that the property belonged to them. The officers arrived before anything escalated, but it was enough that I had the locks changed again, added security cameras around the entire perimeter, and gave my tenants a direct line to building security. My parents didn't try again. Maybe they finally understood the consequences. Maybe they had simply run out of doors to knock on. A few days later, the final hearing for the quiet title action took place. I didn't attend. My lawyer handled it. He presented, and contractor receipts, renovation invoices, tax payments, insurance policies, rental agreements. My father's signed acknowledgement. Screenshots of every credit card charge. Voicemails. The attempted identity fraud logs. Police reports. Trespassing footage. The forged documents. And the notarization incompetence of my aunt. The judge didn't deliberate long. The property was officially mine. No appeals, no negotiation, no question. Afterward, my lawyer called. "Congratulations," he said, but his voice was somber. "It's a shame it came to this." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I know. There was no satisfaction, no triumph. Just the quiet, heavy reality of choosing myself over people who never chose me back. The restitution order for $24,000 came a week after. Even my lawyer admitted it was unlikely they'd ever pay. "That's fine," I said. "Let it sit on their credit for a decade." He didn't argue. Around then, I heard through someone, some friend of a friend who ran into Ryan, that my brother was falling apart. Temp jobs, couch hopping, complaints about family drama ruining everything. He'd tell anyone who listened that I'd gone psycho and stole the house. People asked questions, he panicked, and the story shifted every time depending on the audience. Let him talk, let him spin. The truth didn't need my defense anymore. I had court records for that. Then Christmas rolled around again, a full year since the cruise they took without me. No one reached out. Not my parents, not Ryan, not my aunt. I didn't put up a tree, didn't buy gifts, didn't wrap anything in the sparkly paper I'd bought the year before, just in case. Instead, I drove north to a rental cabin. Fresh snow, pine trees heavy with frost, a fire that crackled through the whole night. I sat on the couch with a blanket around my shoulders, the only sound the wind brushing against the windows. My phone was off. My mind, for the first time in years, was quiet. People say cutting off family feels like losing a limb. They never talk about how sometimes it feels like removing a weight, a breath, a boundary, a door that finally locks from the inside. I don't know where they live now, a motel, a borrowed couch, someone else's problem. They haven't contacted me, and I haven't checked. They took a vacation pretending I didn't exist. I gave them a future where that's actually true, and I'm good.